All right, let's dive into this Women's Premier League match. Gujarat Giants, they took on Royal Challengers Bangalore. And we've got a lot to unpack. So we've got, match reports and analyses from the experts and even some reactions from the players themselves after the game. But we're gonna go dupper than just the scorecard here. We really want to understand like the strategies at play, the turning points, and what this all means for the WPL.
Yeah. This match, I think, on the surface, it might just seem like another game of the WPL, but it actually kind of throws a wrench in a lot of the predictions and expectations that are out there.
Okay, well, I guess the big news is that the Gujarat Giants won, right? But it's not just a win, it's an upset. They were at the bottom of the points table.
Exactly. So you have a team, the Giants, with only their sixth win in WPL history. And to make it even more interesting, three of those wins are against RCB. So there's definitely something going on there.
Yeah, it's almost like RCB, they just haven't figured out how to beat the Giants consistently. So walk me through this. How did it all go down?
Well, the Giants won the toss and they chose to field. And that's actually a trend we've been seeing this season. Chasing has become the preferred strategy in the WPL, I think maybe because of the pitch conditions, maybe because of team compositions. But apart from one exception, no team's been able to successfully defend a total.
So there's this whole like tactical element in play already. Okay, so then what happened?
So RCB, yeah, they're known for their powerful batting lineup.
Mm-hmm.
But they really struggled right away, especially during the power play. They lost their top three batters, Wyatt Hodge, Perry, and even Manhana, who's usually so reliable for very few runs. In fact, Manhana's score was it was the lowest ever recorded for a player who faced 20 or more balls in a WPL inning.
So instead of like those fireworks we're used to seeing RCB's batting, it kind of fizzled out. Why do you think that happened?
Well, it's hard to say for sure, but it could be that the Giants' bowlers were really good at exploiting those early swing conditions. Or maybe RCB's aggressive batting style. It backfired against a really disciplined bowling attack. We've seen a few teams struggle with that this season.
Yeah, makes sense.
But just when things were looking really bad for RCB, Ragvi Bist and Kanika Huja, they came in and they actually stabilized the innings. So, for RCD fans, there was a little bit of hope there.
Yeah, I mean, Ahuja and Bist, they've been like players to watch this whole tournament, right? So did their partnership turn things around for RCB?
It helped, but not entirely. They ended up losing 2 wickets pretty quickly, which kind of stopped their momentum, and RCB never really recovered from that.
So I imagine this is where the Giants' bowling starts to shine.
Absolutely. They were so disciplined, so consistent, just kept the pressure on RCB. Kashvi Gautam with her unique celebration style. She just stands there, arms crossed. It's like she's daring the batters to do better. She was really focused on swing and dot balls. And Tanuja Kanwar also had a standout performance.
I love Gotham Celebration. It's so interesting, like almost psychological, right? Do you think that actually plays a role in her success?
It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely makes her stand out.
Right.
But beyond just those individual performances, you also have to give credit to Ashley Gardner's captaincy. She rotated her bowlers really well. She didn't let RCB get any sort of advantage, and the pressure just kept mounting.
So what did RCB end up with?
125. Which is actually their joint lowest first innings total in the WPL.
Yeah.
And it's especially striking because, the pitch was actually considered pretty good for batting.
Ouch. I mean, at that point, the Giants had to be feeling good, right? Like, even though they were the underdogs coming in.
You'd think so. But in cricket, things can change so quickly. And the Giants did have a little bit of a wobble early on. They lost 2 wickets in the power play. Renuka Singh Thakur for RCB. She was bowling really accurately and made it tough for the Giants to get going. And then there was this brilliant moment from RCB's Richa Ghosh, a stumping that sent Dayalan Hemalutha back to the pavilion.
It's moments like that, right, that just make a match so exciting. Like the tide can turn at any moment.
Exactly. And that's what makes the next part of the match so interesting, because just when RCB might have started to feel like, okay, maybe the momentum's shifting back in our favor, Ashley Gardner and Phoebe Litchfield come in, and they formed a partnership that really changed the whole game.
Here come the heroes. Okay, so tell me more about that partnership. How did they turn things around for the Giants?
Well, Gardner being the captain, she knew exactly what her team needed. She came in with this incredibly aggressive approach, especially against Prima Rawat. In 1 over, she scored 19 runs. And that was it. The momentum just swung right back to the Giants.
Wow, so she really took charge and said, "Nope, we're not losing this." Did RCB have any answer?
They seemed rattled, almost surprised by that sudden change. And the Giants, they just seized that opportunity. This was Gardner's third 50 of the season, a powerful performance that earned her player of the match.
So, I mean, especially considering those early batting struggles, the Giants must have been thrilled, right?
Absolutely. And in her post-match interview, Gardner actually acknowledged the team's need to work on their power play batting. So, she's not only leading on the field, but she's also aware of where they can improve.
A true captain.
Mhm.
But what about Litchfield? How did she contribute to this partnership?
Litchfield she was crucial. She may not have been hitting those big boundaries like Gardner, but she was playing smart, rotating the strike, and giving Gardner the chance to face the bowlers and score. And in her post-match interview, she was actually pretty funny. She talked about this dropped catch that, luckily for her, turned into a runout.
Oh, I love that. A bit of on-field comedy. Okay, so the Giants, they're on fire. What about RCB? How did they react to all this?
Well, Smriti Mandhana, understandably, she was disappointed. In her post-match interview, she was really honest about RCB's struggles. She pointed to the batting and the power play, the fact that they didn't adapt quickly enough to the conditions.
Sounds like they were out of sync with the pitch and with the Giants' strategy. Was there any blame going around?
Montana was actually really graceful in defeat. She didn't blame any specific players or departments, but instead she chose uh, to focus on the positive. She actually highlighted the contributions of those younger players, Bist and Ahuja, which says a lot about her leadership, I think.
It's easy to point fingers after a loss, but it sounds like Montana's, she's trying to be more constructive. That's got to be important for team morale.
Definitely. Dwelling on the negatives doesn't help anyone. And this was actually RCB's third consecutive loss on their home ground. So they definitely have some work to do to get back on track.
Yeah. Okay, so this match, it's a big deal. It shakes things up in the WPL. But how does it fit into, like, the overall story of the tournament?
I think it really highlights this trend we've been talking about, the trend of chasing.
Hmm.
This match almost makes it seem like that's the dominant strategy now. And it makes you wonder, are teams becoming afraid to bat first?
Yeah.
And if chasing has become this powerful force, what can teams do to adapt?
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like, some teams, when they bat first, they're playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And that can be a problem, right?
Absolutely. It's a dangerous mindset.
So is it even possible, like, to set a defendable target at this point?
That's the big question, isn't it? And I don't think there's a simple answer. Maybe we'll see teams try batting more aggressively when they're setting the target, taking more risks to get a bigger score early on.
Right. So they need to, like, flip the script, make the other team feel the pressure for once. It's fascinating.
It is. We're seeing this whole strategy evolve in real time. And it's really hard to say what's going to happen next.
That's what makes sports so much fun. All right, so we've got this upset, we've got these strategic trends, we've even talked about, some of those moments on the field that really changed the energy of the match. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the individual performances that stood out.
Yeah, let's dive into that. It's a tough choice. When you bat first, you get to set the target, but you're also kind of giving the other team a roadmap, right? They can see what they need to do.
Right, it's like you're showing your hand a little bit.
Exactly. But then chasing, even though it seems to be what everyone wants to do right now, it has its own challenges. You're always behind.
Yeah, trying to keep up with that run rate, it can be a lot of pressure.
Exactly. And if you lose some early wickets while you're chasing, it just gets even worse.
We saw that with the Giants, right? Even though they pulled it off in the end, they did lose those 2 early wickets in the power play. Let's talk more about early wickets for a second, because it seems like they're so important in this tournament.
Oh, absolutely. Those early wickets, especially in the power play, they can totally change the whole feel of a match. You lose those top batters early, and suddenly everyone else is under a lot of pressure to get back on track.
Yeah, and it feels like the bowlers know that, right? They come in ready to make a statement.
Right. It's like a chess match. Each team is trying to outsmart the other. And for the bowlers, those early wickets, they're like the key pieces. They set up everything else.
And speaking of key players, I kind of want to go back and talk a little more about some of the individual performances that stood out in this match. We've talked a lot about Gardner, obviously, but what about some of the other players?
Well, on the RCB side, I think Bist and Ahuja, they deserve a lot of credit. They came in at a really tough time. RCB was struggling at 25 for 3.
Yeah, that was a rough moment for RCB.
It felt like the whole match was slipping away. And Bist and Ahuja, they just steadied things. Yeah. It wasn't even just about the runs, but they were so calm under pressure.
Which is amazing, right? They're pretty young players, relatively new to the WPL.
Exactly. It was real bright spot for RCB, even though they didn't win.
Hmm.
It showed what they're capable of.
Yeah, they're definitely players to watch in the future. Okay, so what about the Giants? Anyone else besides Gardner who impressed you?
Tanuja Kanwar, she was fantastic. Her bowling was so effective, she ended up with 2 for 16 from her 4 overs. And that catch she took to get a Huja out, wow,
Oh, yeah, I read about that. Didn't Gardner almost run into her?
almost. But she stayed focused, held on to the ball. It was amazing. It was a huge moment, really turned things around. And it showed how athletic she is, how much she can, handle the pressure.
Those split-second decisions, it's incredible. Okay, and we have to talk about Litchfield, right? Gardner's partner in crime.
Right, right. Litchfield, she might not have scored as many runs as Gardner, but she was so important to that partnership. She was rotating the strike, keeping the score moving, which gave Gardner more chances to go after the bowling.
Yeah, a real team effort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, in the post-match interview, she was talking about that dropped catch, how it turned into a run out. It was pretty funny.
Right. Yeah, it's those moments that make it fun.
Yeah, yeah. Even at this level, it's still a game.
Absolutely. I think that's a good place to pause for now. Okay, so we've talked about the strategies, those big moments, and all those standout players. But let's zoom out a bit and think about what this all means for the rest of the WPL. This win, it's got to have some ripple effects, right?
Yeah, definitely. It kind of changes the picture a lot of people had in their heads about, who's going to do well.
Right. And we keep coming back to this, but that whole chasing thing, it's been so dominant. It almost feels like batting first is like a mental block for some teams.
I think you're right. It can be intimidating. You set a target, and then the other team, they know exactly what they have to do.
And some teams, they get a little too careful when they bat first, right? Like they're playing not to lose, not to win.
Yeah, and that can backfire.
So do you think we'll start to see teams, change things up, try some of the different when they bat first?
Wouldn't surprise me. Maybe they'll take more risks early on, even if it means losing a few wickets,
Yeah.
just to try and build a really big score. Or maybe they'll, I don't know, use different players, mix up the batting order, try to throw the other team off.
They have to keep adapting, right? Trying to stay one step ahead.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so interesting to watch. It's like we're seeing how the game is evolving, and nobody really knows what's going to happen.
Okay, so last question before we wrap things up. Any final thoughts for everyone listening?
We've talked a lot about strategy and tactics and all that, but we can't forget that cricket, it's a human game. It's about passion. It's about, wanting to be your best. And the Gujarat Giants, they really showed that in this match. They came in as the underdogs, but they believed in themselves, and they proved that anything is possible.
I love that. So to everyone listening, remember the Gujarat Giants. Remember that upsets can happen, that even the underdogs can come out on top.
And keep watching the rest of the season. It's going to be exciting. Who knows what's going to happen?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining me for this deep dive. And until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never stop believing.